People of Reddit, what is the most desperate thing you've ever done for money? Many years ago, when I was a child, and my mother and I were facing homelessness, we would spend the nights at various places like laundromats or hospitals. One night, when we were really hungry, my mom had me dive into the wishing well to collect quarters so we could use them for the vending machine. It's one of those surreal memories that stuck with me. Story 2. About 10 years ago, when I was homeless, a kind old homeless lady that I used to buy water and snacks for was crying because she was $20 short of getting a hotel room for the night, and she wanted to shower really bad. So I had a friend drive me to Walmart, and I walked around the parking lot looking for receipts until I found one with something decent that wasn't food. It had a $40 case of diapers on it. I went inside, matched the barcode on the receipt to a box of diapers on the shelf, and went up to customer service and told them my mom wanted me to return them. I got $40 in cash, gave half to the lady for her hotel, and spent that rest on food and drinks. She was so happy she started crying again and hugged me. I still think about that day a lot. Although I don't really condone stealing, I can understand the moral gray areas in which situations such as this one exist. When you let someone get so low to the point where they're starving and must turn to other ways to get food, then it's really on the system instead of the individual. You can tell OP is a genuinely good-hearted person because even being homeless, they shared the money to help someone else in need. Story 3. I participated in some market research for a new beer. It sounded like a great idea at the time. I get paid to drink beer? Anyway, it was a bunch of different beers in small plastic cups, all of which started out tasting like the strainings of the devil's underpants and progressively got worse. They kept bringing more out until one guy cracked, swiped all his beers off the table, and stormed out yelling, "I wouldn't even give this crap to my dog." I still don't know if it was market research or some bizarre psychological experiment. Story 4. I met up with a complete stranger from the internet to sell him some used underwear. If it were a send it in the mail type thing, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But part of it was that he wanted me to meet him in person to give them to him, and then he would pay me in cash. It was a pretty good amount, so I went for it. We talked for a while beforehand, and he seemed really nice. I didn't get the vibe that I was going to get hurt or anything, and I really needed the money. It was a quick meet in a Walmart parking lot, and nothing bad happened. I'm glad OP didn't end up hurt or worse from this interaction. If not doing it wasn't an option, then meeting in a public place such as the Walmart parking lot was the smart thing to do. Story 5. I participated in a food study where I couldn't eat for a day before. I arrived at the lab early in the morning and had a tube put down my throat. I laid there for 6 hours as they pumped liquids into and out of my stomach. After the first 2 hours, I begged them to at least turn on the TV, but they would only let me watch PBS so I couldn't accidentally see any commercials about food. It wasn't fun, but the pay was decent, and they served me a steak dinner afterward. Story 6. I worked at a little Hampton Inn and lived with my sister in a small apartment. We had a roof over our heads, but very little food. We would take naps just so we didn't have to think about being hungry. I started lifting food from work. A few small danishes, some single-serve cups of peanut butter and jam, the commercial packs of coffee for my sister. She'd use the same single-serve coffee for days. We'd mainly buy bread and eggs. I'm pretty sure the owner was on to me, though. He left at 5 and either went out for dinner or home, and then would end up back at the hotel when I was on shift because he accidentally ordered an extra dinner, or his wife made too much chicken and rice or spaghetti again. I'd take it home and share. It was just a rough year. My mom visited and was shocked. She immediately took us to Costco to stock up. We were still eating off that food a year later because she bought us so much. It was nothing fancy, but we felt like royalty with all that food. My definition of success is being able to go to the grocery store and buy whatever I want without counting the cost as I shop. I'm to say I am a total success today. Edit. I was making minimum wage in 1998. It was market rate for the hotel industry. I moved on to the Marriott at the same wage, and within a year I qualified for reservation coordinator, which would have doubled my hourly rate. My new boss blocked me from getting the job at a new residence inn in our area because she needed me. She offered me an 11-cent raise, 6 cents now and the other 5 cents in 6 months. That was the end of my hotel career. I was working full-time and we were renting a converted garage apartment. My sister was starting in real estate, so we were living off of only what I earned. We spent only on necessities. You know, in '98, it was just the way things were. The internet was new, we didn't know it was unfair, and we would have been too tired to do anything about it anyway. There's a new awareness now, and we have to stoke it and ride that wave. I really don't know exactly what to do, but let's keep talking and getting mad. It's the catalyst for change. Story 7. I was poor growing up, like really poor. One time around the age of 8 or 9, I collected a bunch of buttons wherever I could find them lying around the house. I then hit the street going door to door trying to sell them for $1 a piece. It took me 3 hours to make $5. I was so excited that I finally had enough money to buy a sugary cereal, some Lucky Charms. I went to 7-Eleven and bought a box. I got home to eat it, but we didn't have milk, so I started to cry. I ended up using water instead. It was very, very pitiful. Fast forward 40 years and now I can buy milk and cereal anytime I want. It's great. I never take it for granted. Story 8. I have lots of memories of dumpster diving for presents during the holiday season. At work recently, in an effort to make remote work more bearable, my team asked a question about what holiday memory is most distinct in your mind. So many people had these wonderful memories of playing in the snow or cooking something with their family, or going on vacation to this place or that place. So many people had these descriptions of middle-class life because I'm in a white-collar profession that is dominated almost exclusively by middle-class white women. I didn't feel comfortable sharing my experience of digging through dumpsters for toys for my siblings and parents as a holiday memory. I couldn't share that the most memorable thing that comes to my mind when I think of the holidays is when my family procured a Costco-sized package of breath mints. We ate those non-stop for 4 weeks until I got an unbearable stomach ache. And what I remember most about that is that I can't eat breath mints anymore because the smell of them makes me sick. But that is not the type of memory one can share with their coworkers if they are middle-class white women and expect to walk out of that transaction the same person. So I don't share that part of myself with people that I spend a good amount of my day with. Story 9. Retail security. I had to put up with threats of violence, actual violence, being shouted at, having hypodermic needles waved in my face, having excrement thrown at me, only 2 15-hour breaks for a 14-hour shift, and being the blame for anything going wrong in the store. The shop staff were the worst, and in their eyes, I was the lowest of the low and should know my place. 1 or 2 were okay, but the rest got a kick out of dropping me in it. Say hello to someone when you come into work? Got reported. Didn't say hello the next day to the same person? I got reported for it. The staff thought that they could talk down to me, treat me like crap, and I had to stand there and take it. Dear help me if I said anything in return. They could threaten me with violence, but if I snapped back, I got reported to my company, and the store employee was given counseling. All I did was tell someone to F off after they said that they would, given half a chance, stab me. That was completely out of the blue. The employee was in an aisle that I was patrolling down and came out and said that. They were deadly serious, but telling someone threatening to stab you to F off is apparently the worst crime out there, according to that particular store. You couldn't pay me to go back. Story 10. When I was 17, I worked on a 100% commission-based job. I had to pay rent to sleep on a duvet on the floor of my boss's apartment alongside 7 other employees, as well as paying for expenses to travel to different locations, hotels, petrol, etc. As soon as I got paid every week, I was immediately out of money. After asking my parents several times for money, and then after a lot of guilt, I desperately had to ask my boss just for a train fare. It was humiliating. I also asked my best friend at the time, who was also 17. It may not seem that bad or desperate, but the guilt, stress, and embarrassment I felt was something else. Screw that job. Not only does the working conditions sound illegal, but OP and the 7 other employees should have realized that the job is definitely not worth it if you're having to pay your boss to sleep on the floor just to pay for somewhere to rest. I'm glad they finally realized the type of exploitation that was going on and got out of there before being trapped. Story 11. Back in 1993, I went on a road trip around the US for the summer with friends in a VW camper van. I ran out of money somewhere along the Gulf Coast. One of my friends had a tin full of embroidery thread, so I started doing hair wraps at beach tourist traps. I ended up making about $100 a day, and as my friends ran out of money, they joined in. By the time we'd worked our way up the East Coast, we had multiple organizers full of embroidery thread and beads. It covered our campgrounds, food, and fuel. Once we ran out of beach towns, we headed back home. This one is a very nice contrast to most of the other stories. I really wish there were more of these types of experiences compared to the others, where the worst thing they've had to do for money out of desperation is braiding hair on the beach while surrounded by friends. Story 12. I co-owned a construction company in the early 2000s with a friend. We remodeled apartment complexes all over the country. We had been trying to get in with the largest property management firm in the country, who had a corporate office in Chicago. The lady who awarded the contracts took a shine to me. A huge contract to do a full exterior rehab on 3 complexes, all adjacent to one another, was on the table. It was made clear that a night with this woman would get us the contract, which held a nearly $2 million profit margin over the course of 3 years. Now, sleeping with this woman doesn't sound like a big deal, but she was a large, very tall German woman who looked like Kathy Bates, but uglier, and 30 years my senior. I was really positive that the little general wouldn't stand at attention. I mean, it was like doing it with a female Shrek. I went through with it. We got the contract along with a lot more work, but not without having to repeat the performance periodically. Whiskey, my skills, a strong stomach, and a good crew are what put me on the road to being able to retire at 40 if I had chosen to do so.